8, there will be tabled a copy of an email from the Secretary of the Taxi Owners Association.
Chairman, the report has been tabled.
Any declarations of interest? So we'll move on to the minutes, which are tabled on pages 3 to 10 of the meeting held on 18th of February. So they are submitted for approval. We need a mover and a seconder. So, Councillor Rosa, yeah.
I'll second.
Anyway, so procedure for...
Oops. Sorry. The standard report, this is 5A, sorry. The standard report, pages 11 to 14 by the Director of the Resources on the procedure for considering applications is for noting at this stage. So 5B, which there are submitted various reports by the Director of Resources following the meeting of the Hire Car Liaison Group on March 19th. Perhaps the committee should consider the various items and then decide if there's... So B1, there is submitted a report, pages 15 to 46, by the Director of Resources concerning the draft conditions of licensing for taxis and private hire cars and drivers. There are 3 areas where there is potentially a difficulty as regards acceptance, namely fixed steps in taxis, dress code and inclusion of dimensions of taxis. All of these issues are discussed in the report. It is suggested that the committee consider approving the revised conditions of licensing subject to the recommendations on page 17.5. Yeah.
Hi. Title on page 15, 2.2, on the second paragraph, very last sentence says a further update will be given at this meeting. Is that a verbal report?
Not picking up where that is.
Sorry, whereabout is that?
Page 15, 2.2, the second paragraph,
Yeah.
the very last sentence.
A further update will be given at the meeting.
Yeah, what we were doing there was trying to get more information about the fixed steps in taxes, and really it's inconclusive at this stage. And I guess perhaps what we ought to do then is really just to keep the reference to fixed steps in taxes not being permitted, on the basis that what we can do is keep that under surveillance and report back to committee as and when there is further information to report.
Everybody happy with that? Yeah.
Well, what did that mean?
Sorry?
What did that mean?
It means, what I'm suggesting is that we leave the conditions of licensing as they stand, which says in that respect, no fixed side steps shall be fitted. That's at condition 16 in the conditions of fitness.
Yeah.
We're taking the view here that fixed steps are inappropriate because of the design at the moment. What this is, so we've taken the position here that the fixed steps are inappropriate for the taxis on the basis of our concerns about their design. What's been suggested in the paper here today is that there may be alternative, more streamlined steps available, but the expectation was that we would be told more information about that today. If we're in a situation where we've not got that up-to-date information, then the situation hasn't changed, therefore we should retain that clause, and the first recommendation should be removed in effect, because that's suggesting we delete our prohibition of the fixed steps from the paper.
Okay? Yeah.
Okay.
Well, as regards to the other conditions, the others that were causing concern at the time were the inclusion of the revised dress code, and you'll see what the trade were suggesting. The only comment we make there is that perhaps the word coloured should be deleted from the description of the dress code at the end of the draft conditions of licensing. That's page 46. Where it says smart footwear, shoes or boots. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about there. And the next one was the retention or deletion of the condition of fitness relating to the dimension of taxis. And here again, I've not really got much more information forward, and I think that it would be best if that condition were left in as well. So in other words, the conditions will continue to say that the vehicles shall be so many metres wide and so many metres long. The only point there is that at 15.2 on page 39, right at the bottom of the page, second last line, it says that the overall width of the vehicle, exclusive of driving mirrors, must not exceed 1.78 metres. The 1.78 metres relates to the old metropolitan style taxis. So the suggestion there would be that that should be increased to 2 metres to take in the likes of Peugeot Euro 7 and the new generation of taxis.
Does that mean there's no decisions to be taken because there's no formal update, so we're just leaving it as it was?
I think what I'm suggesting is that the members approve the draft conditions as they are, subject to what I've said.
Okay, so move on to 5B2, which is on page 4.
It's just that under recommendations it has the dress code on page 17, which is different to the dress code on page 46.
Right, yes. What happened was that the matter was discussed at the liaison group, and you'll see in the report of the liaison group, which is in the private papers, the suggestion that was made. So what we've done is I've picked that up and put it into this report that's on the agenda at page 17. That is the proposed dress code, and my point there was that there on page 17 it's showing smart footwear, shoes, boots. It says dark coloured trainers, but the word coloured would come out as far as I think anyway.
Yeah.
I'm quite confused actually. Can I propose that we have this withdrawn and have it submitted properly the next time, because we're changing this and keeping that and a wee bit alteration here and not so much there that it's quite confusing.
Jamie, Councillor Bryant is right, sorry.
No, it does seem to be the case that we didn't have up-to-date information that we should have before we make these decisions. What appears to me to be suggested here is that we accept the amended conditions here, but change the issue of the dress code. And that's the only thing we would be agreeing to. Is that what you're suggesting?
As Jamie mentioned, or Councillor Bryant has said, on page 46, the dress code is different from what is being recommended. So what is correct?
Chair, the page 47 is the draft conditions of licensing that were submitted for consideration at the meeting of the liaison group. Now, what I've said is that the liaison group considered that the draft conditions in relation to the dress code ought to be altered, and the alteration is shown page 17 of the agenda at paragraph 5b. There's not an awful lot of change, but you know, what the trade were saying was along the lines of you ought to allow jeans to be worn, but they're conscious of the fact that sometimes jeans nowadays have tears in them, that kind of thing, and are therefore not suitable. So the trade suggested that the description be approved as amended, as they have suggested, and also in the previous one, trainers were not in the frame, but they have asked that she go in, provided they're dark, and therefore give a presentation of being suitable for their appearance.
I mean, basically, all we're saying here is that what's recommended in page 17 replaces what's in page 46. That's it? That's all we've been asked to do. So it's, I mean, I think I'm trying to make it, you know, I know it's not been sort of that clear, but I think that is what we're saying. As far as the dress code goes, yeah. So if that's acceptable, and it looks fairly acceptable to me, that it's a reasonable way forward, I would move we accept it, just as it stands without the...
I'll second that in terms of the dress code. The other two items are out, obviously. That allows us to move on that. We can come back at some later date should answers or should the situation change with regard to recommendation A and C.
So 5B2 on page 47. There is submitted a report by the Director of Resources concerning the introduction of extended term licences. It is recommended that the introduction of 3-year licences for drivers be approved subject to the recommendations on page 48, item 5. Number 1, further examination of the notion that the individual licence holders meet the cost of their examinations, and 2, fixing of the fees by the Council following consultation with the short-term working group on fees and charges. It had been thought that it may be appropriate also to provide for extended term licences for taxis and private hire cars, but the trade indicated a preference for this to apply to drivers. Perhaps the committee would agree to authorise officers to examine this, and if there are potential benefits to be gained, further action will be possible. Anybody want to say anything about that? So for noting, yep. So we'll move on to 5B3. So on page 49. There is submitted a report, pages 49 to 54, by the Director of Resources concerning the installation of CCTV in taxis and private hire cars. Glasgow Council have introduced a pilot scheme, the terms of which are attached to the report. It is recommended that the committee approve in principle the installation of CCTV in hire cars and await a report back. The recommendations are on page 50, item 5. Are you happy with that? Yeah. Okay. So 5B4 is a follow-on paper. Does everybody have a copy? Yeah. Yeah. So there is submitted a report, pages F1 to F3, by the Director of Resources concerning the approach to licence fees for taxis and private hire cars and drivers. There are 3 or 4 elements to this. 1. The introduction of extended term licences to 3 years for drivers and possibly vehicles. 2. The potential anomalies concerning the level of fees for the examination of vehicles. 3. The request by the Taxi Owners Association that the increase in fees that was approved by Council in March should not be applied. The recommendations are on page F2, item 5, and I'll just read them out. Recommendation A. Note the consideration will be given to the level of fees for extended terms of drivers, and also, as noted at item 2, if approved, taxi and private hire car licences and any related matters, in consultation with the short-term working group on fees and charges. And B. Otherwise note the comments that had been made by the Taxi Owners Association. Anybody got anything they want to say about that?
Are we supposed to have a copy of this report?
Was your follow-on papers in the envelope you got? No.
That's one envelope I got.
Yeah, you got this the other day.
Thank you.
Chair, we're only being asked here to note that the consideration is going to be given to the level of fees in consultation with the short-term working group on fees and charges, which is still has got another meeting at least to hold. So we're really only being asked to note the comments that have been made, and obviously those who are serving on the short-term working group will be made aware of these comments that have been made by the association. So I think it's really just a paper for note.
That's correct, yeah.
Just looking at the last increase is obviously April 11, and the proposed new charges, they seem to be proportionally, a fair percentage increase until you get right down to, just below the middle, taxi adjust licence, change of vehicle, inspection required from £40 to £60. That sort of sync a bit with the charging increases, and that seems to be about 50% of an increase. And is there any reason why that one is out of sync with the rest?
The difference, it's not explained there, but the price before didn't include the cost of plates, and the new price includes the cost of plates, so that is £20.
Very happy to note the report. So we'll move on to 5B5. Taxi stances. This report is submitted pages 55 to 58 by Director Resources concerning the appointment, alteration and revocation of taxi stances. Are there any comments from members? The recommendations are on page 57.5. Councillor Johnson.
Could some further explanation be given about the taxi rank proposed for Eskview Grove being revoked and it being placed at Bogwood Road roundabout? There's already a bus stop there and it's already congested. Will taxis not make further congestion?
What the trade were saying was that the taxi stances in Eskview Grove weren't being used just now, so their first reaction was to say that they should be revoked. But they were saying that they had a notion some years ago that it should be up at the roundabout. But I think we'd be taking on board any comments about road safety at that location. What will happen is that this will go to an officer working group comprising police, roads, others, and have a look at it and then a report back to committee.
Okay, so everybody happy to move on to note the report? So we'll move on to 5C. Sorry.
Excuse me, no, the recommendations are that we agree these things, not just to note them. I'm not happy to agree to a taxi rank on a roundabout.
No.
Does it?
Yeah.
It's been explained. I think it does say that it's to investigate the feasibility of a pointless stance there. So obviously it's important though that transportation be consulted in respect to the concerns that Councillor Johnston's raising.
Can I just say that the proposal is not to put it on the roundabout, but to put it some way back on the road, on the entrance to the roundabout.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm quite happy to have this proposed and looked at, because obviously it is only investigation at the moment. Obviously regarding the Dalkeith stances, looking at the fact to have CCTV cameras there, because I know that is an issue for the taxi drivers and obviously the people that use the taxis as well. So I'm quite keen for that one to move forward and get a report on that one. Thank you.
Okay, so everybody happy now? Can we move on?
There's one issue there, Chairman, as regards the stance in the Eskebank Road. When it was talked about initially in 2008, it was to accommodate 8 taxis. The new design of the new supermarket accommodates only 6 taxis, so we're asking that the committee approve its appointment for 6 taxis rather than 8.
Is the committee quite happy to approve?
Chair, should that level of detail not be in the recommendation? Should that level of detail not be in the recommendation?
It should have been, but this is information which I found out relatively late. The working party only met probably about 10 days ago, so there hasn't been a lot of time to find out all the information.
Right.
Ready to move on, yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to 5C. So there is submitted a report, pages 59 to 94, and another supplementary F5 to F10, providing draft answers by the Director concerning the Government's consultation as regards the use of wild animals in travelling circuses to be banned in Scotland. Current Council policy is described in the supplementary paper. Any such public entertainment licences are granted subject to a full veterinary inspection of all animals, the cost of which is borne by the licence holder. A blanket ban was not possible. All applications have to be considered on their merits. The current policy of the Council as landowner in relation to parks and open spaces is that any requests from the proprietors of travelling circuses with wild animals will be refused. On the basis of these policies, i.e. with an emphasis on protection of animal welfare, a draft response to the questionnaire has been prepared and is attached as an appendix to the supplementary report. Members are invited to consider it when deliberating on the subject. The committee is asked to A. Note the terms of the report and B. Consider remitting submission of a response to the Director in consultation with the Chair, taking into account the views of members. So, everybody happy there? Yeah. Happy to note the report? Yeah. So, item number 6 on the agenda, landlord registration.
Adele Ryan is here.
Oh, okay. So I'll let Adele Ryan introduce the report, which is on pages 95 to 98 of the papers.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for revised arrangements to undertake checks on the status of individuals applying to be residential landlords. Members will be aware that in terms of landlord registration, local authorities are required to assess whether applicants are fit and proper persons to be landlords. And the 2004 Act, which governs this matter, details the matters which should be considered in making such a determination, and these are included in the paper. Previously, Environmental Health worked closely with the police to check every applicant's criminal status as part of the registration processes. And using that mechanism, Midlothian Council, cross-checking the declarations made by all landlords, identified that just 0.1% of individuals who had not declared relevant convictions, meaning that 99.9% of persons applying had made correct and appropriate declarations. Changes in legislation now means that Midlothian Council can no longer carry out routine criminal checks on all applicants. Additionally, the police have advised that they can not carry out routine police checks on all landlords without due reason, as to do so would breach human rights legislation, and a new procedure is therefore required. Now, whilst routine criminal checks on all landlords are no longer permitted, the police have indicated that they will continue to provide relevant information where there are valid and demonstrable grounds for concerns. It is the proposal in this paper that internal local authority checks will be conducted with both the community safety team, that's the antisocial behaviour team of old, and with the trading standards team on 100% of applicants who apply for landlord registration. In all circumstances where reasonable information or concern exists or becomes available, referral will then be made to the police for further scrutiny of these applicants to verify the accuracy of the information provided before they could be entered on the landlord register. This leaves a very slight risk, bearing in mind it was 0.1% of people who had not made declarations in excess of 3,000 applications. This leaves a very slight risk of not identifying a landlord's past criminality. However, continuing with the previously agreed process is now out with the remit of the amended legislation, and this in itself would pose a major risk for the local authority. The recommendations are contained in paragraph 5 on page 98, and the committee are asked to note the changes in the legislation and clarification from Police Scotland in relation to data protection issues, that this prevents the routine checking by the Council of 100% of applicants. And the committee are further asked to agree the new procedure for internal checks with community safety and trading standards, leading to referral to Police Scotland where information may raise concern about a new applicant or indeed any existing applicant.
Okay, I'll open it up to any comments from the committee.
We are where we are. If legislation scuppers us for routinely checking the criminal background of applicants, then that's as it is going to have to be. However, the only caution I've got here is that we shouldn't be too complacent about the 99.9% of people who correctly declare, because I would guess that an element of pushing them towards that would be the fact that they know that the checks would be done and we would be informed if they were misinforming us or leaving things out. So my concern there would be that we would be likely to see a drop in, and once it becomes common knowledge that we're not able to routinely check that kind of information, that the honesty of some individuals might be less than it would have been in the previous circumstances.
May I respond, Chair? Certainly I appreciate what you say in relation to that if people know they're likely to be checked, they're likely to tell the truth. What I would say, however, is a large percentage of the people who make their applications do through the national Scottish website, which requires them to fill in the information. without ever having to even talk to anyone in Midlothian Council in relation to that. Certainly this was a belt and braces approach that we had adopted in Midlothian previously, but I don't think it necessarily follows that 100% of the people who were being checked would have been aware that we were doing that extra degree of scrutiny on them. So whilst I take what you say in relation to that, I think there's some balance to be had in relation to that as well, that we wouldn't have told 100% of the people that that's what we were doing.
Councillor Johnson.
It's not just criminal activity that impacts on a tenant. There's other practices that are not really good, and there's nothing in here describing what you're doing about that. Maybe housing benefit or the housing department could be checked out as well.
Certainly the requirements in the Act which we are allowed to consider are listed in paragraph 2.2 of the paper, and that indeed does include contravention of any law relating to housing or landlord and tenant law. What I should have said is the community safety team encompasses at present both the antisocial behaviour officers and the housing officers, so we do have that housing input there for us that we are aware of where that takes us forward.
So is the committee happy to note the changes in legislation, and do we agree with the new procedure of internal checks? Yep. We'll move on to item number 7, which is a private, so if there's any members of the public, if you could please leave.